Okay gang, here for the next day we're going to start doing a little bit more cleanup, but at the end of the last video I was talking about D-sub cables and I finally went through and organized everything, and I wanted to show you because people have asked me how many cables, how much does it cost to hook up this entire SSL. So here's what we have. So I went through and I piled them up by size and I made sure I labeled them all by the size. A lot of the Jumper Z's here already have, this is what's really nice, they tell you what the length is. Oddly enough, the Mogamis do not do that at all. So I measured each one of the Mogamis and put a label on them. This one's a 20 footer. So I got them in piles. So what I have here is I have 2 piles, and I'll tell you how many in a minute, 2 piles of 20 footers. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 piles of 15 footers, and then a pile of 10 footers. So if you want to know how many cables this is, I wrote it down here. So we have in this pile here 6 10 footers, 22 15 footers, 9 20 footers, and 2 25 footers, which is 39 cables. So 39 cables that go from the SSL to the patch bays and into the IO. That's what it takes. Now that doesn't include any of the cabling that goes from the gear, the hardware, all the gear, all the breakout cables that go to the patch bay. That doesn't include that. That's all sitting in this bin right down here. And those are all either Jumper Z, Mogami, or Proco cables. So those are high quality cables too. So if you took the average, and these are all, by the way, all Jumper Z and Mogami, probably a 50-50 split. But Jumper Z's are just about as expensive as Mogami. Slightly less expensive, but not really. A 15-foot Jumper Z is about $140. A 15-foot Mogami is about $160. So I mean, they're pretty close in price. So we only have Mogamis and Jumper Z's coming off the console. No HOSA, no Planet Waves, none of that stuff we used to do in the past. So if you took the average of about $170 a cable, because a 20 footer is like $250, I just took the average about $170. There's about a little over $6,000 of cable sitting there. So it's about $6 grand just in cables for the SSL. If you take the bin of cables that go from the hardware to the patch bay, and again, those are all a mix of Mogami, Jumper Z, and some Procos from Sweetwater. And even the Procos are the least expensive of the 3, but they're still pretty expensive. I didn't count up how many cables are there, but I gotta think there's gotta be at least $1,000, if not more, sitting there. So if I had to say safely, you're probably looking anywhere from $7,000 to $8,000 in cables just to hook up all this gear, all the gear that you guys have seen, you know, all this stuff, and all the interfaces, the IO, the NG levels, this whole thing. You're talking about, I'd say $8 grand is probably where you're at. Now again, that'll depend on the length of cable, but again, we're using mostly 15 and 20 footers here, so those are pretty long. If you get longer ones, it's even gonna cost you more money. They get expensive. So, you know, if you're purchasing a $60,000 SSL, plan on $8,000 worth of cables. That'll get you all high-end cables. Now, again, people have, you know, we've talked about this on live streams and in prior videos about the different quality of cables. And do you really need to use Mogami Gold and Jumper Z? You can use all HOSA cables. And you can buy HOSA cables for probably a fraction of the price. And you could buy HOSA cables for who knows, maybe, you know, if you're talking about $8,000 for probably, you know, $3,000 or $4,000, probably half that price, probably even less than half. But I gotta tell you, Dave and I used HOSA cables. You remember seeing the old videos, we tried it. And I gotta tell you, we had problems that I couldn't necessarily, we had several problems with noise and things not working properly sound-wise and it crackling and stuff. And some of that stuff we can trace back to the cables. Some of it we couldn't. As soon as I changed out all the cheaper cables and put all high-end cables in here, all that stuff went away. And again, there's a debate, you know, we've debated that before. I think if you're only using a handful of these things, yeah, go the cheapest route. You don't need to worry about it. But when you're putting 40 of them in close proximity, running them on top of each other, running them near, you know, power lines and power cables, I think, look, cables are an investment, right? So it's to me, it's just part of owning a console. So anyway, that's what we have. We have 39 D sub cables plus all the gear cables, about say about $8 worth of money. That's what it costs. So if you guessed and put your comments in the last video, maybe you guessed how many you think it is. And but that's what it is, 39 cables, and that's pretty much using every single input on the SSL. So that's what we're doing. So again, the next thing we're going to do today, as I said, is we're going to come through here and we're going to clean up all this stuff. The last thing I have to do, I could probably turn on this light here, make it a little bit brighter. Probably should have thought of that before I started the video, right? Okay. So the last thing to do before we start rewiring is there's still some stuff with some internet cabling and some HDMI cabling going to the cameras. I'm going to pull all that back, clean it all up. That's all part of this that's running along the floor here. I got to get that routed behind the rack, underneath the racking, as we talked about in one of the other videos. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get all of that kind of cleaned up and just out of the way. And then the next step is going to be starting with power. We're going to start with power cables behind here, behind the racks. I've already put the UPSs on the floor over here on a little stand. I've already got the big trunk of the 6 power conditioners that are going to go to those surge and UPS backups. And then we're going to start with power. We're going to start just taking all the power, running it down, wire managing it, getting it as neat as we can, getting them plugged into the power conditioners, which now are right down here. Again, sorry if the lighting is not great. But again, now that we have access to everything, this is just going to be so nice to just be able to reach in there with your hand and plug things in without having to mess around. And when we get to the point where we're hooking up D-sub cables to the I/O and stuff, it's going to be so much easier. And then once I get that, I got to clean up some of the computer wires and stuff that I kind of threw on the cart. That'll be the next step before we start doing signal cables. So anyhow, that's where we are. That's our little cable story, and I'll be putting more footage together as we make progress. Okay guys, we're here next morning. I think the last section we were talking about all the D-sub cables and the cost of that. So it's the next morning now. Let me show you what the goal is for today. It's going to be a little bit of a short day. I'm getting a late start here, but let me turn this light on back here first. Should be more prepared, right? Okay, so the goal for today is really simple. Before I start running signal cables and stuff off the console, I'm going to get now the computer all hooked back up. Again, now that we can get access back here, it's great. I want to get the computer hooked up. I this morning did all the power conditioners. There's 6 of them for all the gear and the console and everything. That's all running down here along the side, and that is going to 2 UPSs that I have. One of them is just for the SSL because the SSL draws that much off of it. And the other one, and the speakers, and the other one is for all the gear, computer, and all of that. So that's all hooked up on this little table here, just stuffed into the corner. So I got easy access. There's a bundle that runs here, comes up and goes into the back of the racks. Hopefully you can see all of that. Next step now is to, before I run signal, or before I even run power from all the gear, because that'll be maybe tomorrow. Today, because I don't have a lot of time today, I got to get a couple of things done here. I want to get all of the computer stuff, just making sure all that is plugged in. I had to unplug a bunch of stuff, rehook all that up, test that out, make sure that it works. More importantly, I got to run all the HDMI cables from the computer that goes over to the big screen above the console. And then there's other things I got to do, split the HDMI signal on my little splitter here. That is so I can split the signal to send so I can send the DAW, the screen, Studio One, to the video capturing device. So when we do videos and I'm showing you what's going on in Studio One, I can do that. So I got to run HDMIs and all of that. So I've had all that hooked up before, but now that the rack is completely across the room, I don't know if my HDMI cables are going to be long enough, right? You always, when you move stuff, here we go, right? So I'm going to test all of that, make sure that all the HDMI cables are working, that they reach, figure out what I need to do there, get the computer powered on, make sure that all works, get all of the quantums and the NG levels all plugged back into power, get all that working, and then I'm going to try to cable manage this a little bit better. We have a shelf down here where you can see all the power bricks for the universal audio satellite, for my OWC dock, for the quantums. They're just kind of all thrown back here on a shelf, which is fine, that works. And before, when we didn't have a lot of access back here, you know, we may do. But now that I have the opportunity and I can get to everything, I'm going to try to cable manage this better. I'm going to try to, you know, just situate this a little bit better, the best that I can. It's never going to be perfect, obviously, because there's too many cables, but I'm going to try to clean a lot of this up and at least get the computer end of it with the screens and the HDMI cables and everything all run. I also have to run Cat5 Ethernet over here, right? I've already started to do that last night. Come back around here, you'll see, well, you may not see, there's a couple of Cat5, those black cables. Those are Cat5 that runs all the way from the other end of the room where the server rack used to be, where it comes in on a switch. So I'm running Ethernet along the baseboard here to get all the Cat5 over, not only to the computer, but to the trin off. Both of those things need a Cat5 wire, so we have 2 of those over here, which will be good. And then once I do all my tests and I see all the HDMI and everything is working, then I'm going to tackle, and again, sorry that it's dark over here, this wire, these bundles here. This is all the stuff that goes. All this here that you see is only for video, to capture all the video at the video capturing station that I showed you in the last video. So everything that we do at Mixing Music Analog, when I have, you know, 5 or 4 or 5 different camera angles, so you see me switching all the camera angles, or I'm doing the POV mixing and all that cabling is required to do that. So I'm going to get it all situated, get it nice and bundled up. I got some more cable wraps coming in. I'm going to route it underneath the record bookcase there, come around the wall, and then it's going to, you know, it's going to run to wherever it needs to go. It's going to come along the baseboard. Some of it's going to go up to a camera up above the TV, which shows you the top of the SSL. Other ones are going to go all the way over to this side. It'll be over here. Remember, we had a camera over on this side. We're still going to have the same amount of cameras. They may be positioned slightly different, but we're still going to have the same amount of camera angles. So I got to make sure that we have HDMI in all the right places, Cat5 in all the right places. The computer's turned on and working. You can see now that we have our power supplies plugged in. The NG levels are lit up. The quantums are lit up. We have power going here. I just got to test everything. So if I could get the computer running, get the rest of the Cat5 stuff run over, the HDMI all figured out, if I could get all that done today, that'll be a win. And then either later today or tomorrow, or the next step is now just wire managing and starting to run power from all the equipment through all the wire management and getting all that stuff down and plugged into the power conditioners down here. So that's where we are. So we're making progress here. Again, I think this might be day 4 of all the footage, so it's taken me 3 full days to get to this point, and now I'm on day 4 and we're working through it. And then once we get all the power hooked up, then we start tackling all the signal cables from the SSL and determining, do we have enough? We know we have enough cables, right? But do we have the right lengths of cables? And if not, if I have to order anything, what do I have to order so I can get them here quickly so we can get the SSL hooked back up? But we're still a little bit of ways from starting that project. So that's where we are. Today we're going to be spinning a little bit more of Eric Clapton, Slow Hand at 70, live at the Royal Albert Hall vinyl. That's going to be the music for today. So I will come back a little later and show you if I made any progress. Okay, gang, we're at the end of another day here. It's a short day today, half day for me, because I got a bunch of private students I got to work with tonight, and so on and so forth. So let me just show you what I've gotten done. My goal today, I said, was to get the computer tested, make sure all the HDMI cables are running, all the Cat5 was running. and then do some wire management behind the computers. Well, I got part of it done. I got this done, which I think is the most important part. Hopefully you'll be able to see this okay. So, and I still have more to do. Let me sit down here. So basically what I did, this is an HDMI cable that's gonna run it outside the room here. So basically what I did was I got all the power conditioner stuff as we talked about earlier. And then what I did is I went down here to the shelf where all the power bricks are for the Quantums, for my USB dock, the OWC dock, and I just kind of wire managed everything the best I could, and I Velcroed these all down to the shelf so they can't move. And the reason for that is because here's the Quantums, and then right above them are the NG levels. So we're gonna have all kinds of D subs coming in through here. So I wanted to make sure these things didn't slide around like they were before. There were wires everywhere. I twist tied all the wires together the best I could. And then I ran them up to the power conditioner, which you probably can't see. Everything is labeled. I put some wire managers on the back, and where things were just super long, I coiled them up and hung them and labeled them. So it looks a little sloppy, but it's neater than it's ever been. I'll do a little bit more here. I also got Cat 5 stuff run up the side of the rack to the trim off into the computer, so that's done. So before, when you would pull this rack out like you saw a few videos ago, it was just, you couldn't see anything through here. Now we have a nice clear opening with 2 wire managers for D subs. That is where all the signal path is going to come from the console to go to the Quantums and the NG levels. Those are going to come through these 2 wire managers here. Okay. And then on the bottom, we have a wire manager that's going to handle all the power from all the gear. So that's going to be coming up. So this rack is pretty much done. I had to move like USB docks and stuff over here for controlling the West Audio gear, HDMI splitters for video. The one thing I did not get done today, which I was hoping, was get the HDMI cables run out to all the different screens, turned on the computer, and make sure everything was working. I did everything except for that. So we got it pretty clean, fairly clean behind the rack here. And again, all the computer stuff is pretty much done with the exception of a couple of HDMI cables. And then the next step after that is to start running power for all the equipment. So not a bad day. I was hoping to get a little further, but you know how it is. These things take longer than they normally should. And I wanted to take my time and made sure that I tried to be as neat as I possibly could. This gap is going to close. I'm going to slide these racks over a little bit. Yeah, over just a tiny bit. I think we have enough of a gap here for all the... So, or actually, no, I'll probably move the server rack back over here a little to give us a little more room there for D subs. So anyway, that's where we are. Sorry we didn't get more of an update. I will come back tomorrow and keep working, try to get the computer finished. And then I got to get over here. I didn't get to this. This was part of today's goal. Didn't get to this. So maybe this is tomorrow. Tomorrow I could get that all cleaned up as I planned. Get the HDMI cables running from the computers over to the screens for video and all of that. And then once that's done and I know it's all working, then we will have, we will start powering up the gear. Okay, so I'll add more footage to this as I make more progress. Okay, gang, next update, it is the next day, and let me show you where I am at. So, I've been up since about 6 o'clock, 6:30, so it's about 8:37 a.m. So I've been down here about 2 hours working on this. And let me show you where I left off. So last video, we talked about yesterday and today's goal, if we ran into today, was going to clean up all the HDMI wires and everything that's needed for all the video. And I had to put that on hold. And the reason for that is because I did finally get the computer up and running and got it tested. It is working. As you can see, we got a computer. Mac Mini's working. I got Cat 5 wires. Again, I'm going to put all that in split loom running across the floor. Cat 5 wires, HDMI cables going to the big screen. All that's taken care of. But what I realized was I am short 2 HDMI cables. I need one that goes from the back of this rack now. Remember, the server rack used to be way over there. And it used to go from HDMIs would go from here to here, which is about, I don't know, 15 feet, 13 feet. Now it's about 30 feet because it's all the way across the room. So I need two longer HDMI cables, which I ordered last night, won't be here till tomorrow. One's gonna go from here somewhere over here because I'm gonna have a secondary screen. It used to be sitting on this side, it may be on this side now, I'm not sure. But I ordered a 20-footer so I could put a secondary monitor next, you know, as a supplement to that over here. And then another one that has to go from, again, from here, the computer, all the way across the room, underneath the records, and all the way over here to capture the DAW for the videos that I do with you guys on YouTube. So if I want to capture the DAW, I have to be able to get an HDMI cable over there. So there's two cables coming tomorrow, which is Sunday. So until I can run those cables from here all the way down and along the back, like I said, then that's all a part of this. So I gotta wait till I get those cables in here before I start managing all of this. So that's put off. The other thing I need to do is I also need to run from the server rack now, from one of the Quantums, usually it's the 2626. I take a pair of outputs and I run those are 1/4 inch to XLR, all the way over again to our video capturing station. And that is the audio that comes off of the SSL. So again, before it was only running from here to here. Now it's running all the way across the room. So I do have cables for that. I have long enough cables to get all the way around the room. But again, that's got to happen with the HDMI cables. So because of those two things, the HDMIs and the audio cables, I'm going to wait on this part of it here. Because once I have those cables and all routed, then I can deal with this, which shouldn't take more than an hour or so. I just got to disconnect stuff here, reroute stuff, pull out cables, so on and so forth. So what I did in place of that, let me show you this. First, before I forget, what are we spinning today? If you want to know, we are spinning John Mal and the Blues Breakers. I've been on an Eric Clapton kick. I've been listening to Clapton for the last 3 days. So I got some vinyl there. Again, we can't listen to that on YouTube because of copyright, but just so you know what we're spinning today. So what did I do today? I did what was going to be next on the list. We got all the power hooked up. So look at this. And I got a little bit more to do as far as cable management goes, but let me sit down here and let me show you. So we now have all the gear powered. Everything is coming down. I don't know if it's going to be too bright or, you know, it's usually never too much light, right? So anyway, I've cable managed everything the best I could. I ran out of cable Velcro straps. I ordered some of those from Amazon. So those are coming today. So all the gear now, everything has been routed down here, comes along this wire manager, comes along this wire manager, and then it goes into the power conditioners. And again, I can't stress this enough, how much easier this was and how much nicer it is. To have access behind this rack is unbelievable. Now again, I know it looks nice and kind of tidy now, and I know once we put 40D sub cables plus all the gear cables, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be cable nightmare. There's no way around it. But just the fact that you can get back here and I was able to just sit on the floor and just plug everything in and route everything through the wire managers and label everything, unbelievable. So that's done. You'll see all the power bricks down here for the West Audio 500 series racks and a couple of the audio-scape units. All the power bricks are tucked under the rack. They're all labeled. Everything is running up, running over. Everything looks like it's in good shape. And then the power conditioners come out and go to the UPSs, which are over here, which I showed you yesterday. And the other thing I did yesterday, I think I might have showed you, I'm not sure, but I'll show you again. As you can see in here, all the power bricks for the Quantums, for the USB dock, for all the Mac, all the computer stuff. Everything is Velcroed down so they don't slide all over the place. They're easy to see. Everything is kind of cable managed up here the best I could. So again, it's so nice to be able to just stand here and just mess around with the back of this rack. I can't tell you. Trin off is hooked up, all the internet, or all the Ethernet for the Trin off, all the Ethernet for the Mac, all that's been done. I got my HDMI splitters for all the video we were talking about. I got my powered hub for all of the West Audio digital control. You know, all their hardware is digitally controlled. Everything has a USB cable. Plus I got some spares that I need, eye locks and those kinds of things. So yeah, so this is kind of what it looks like behind the rack with just the power. Looks pretty good. Now it's going to get hairy because the next thing we got to do is start putting D-subs. That's next. But the other thing I wanted to show you is, and again, this is just because I was able to get back here and neatly do everything, even though when I did all the power, let me show you how many power cables are actually eliminated from the system. And what I realized is I still have about 5 plugs open on one of the power conditioners, where before I didn't, because we were unplugging and replugging gear in and we had things plugged in that wasn't being used. Let me show you the amount of cables that came out of just out of the power conditioners. All those extensions, all these extensions, all these cables were behind that server rack. I don't know, how many are there here? I know it's a little dark, sorry for the video. Tons of power extension. Tons of power extension. I mean, just look at all these cables. All of this was behind that server rack. And the reason why we had all those cables is, if you remember, when the server rack was in this corner, remember we had extensions coming out the back of the power conditioners and we wrapped them around the wall here, if you remember, when the racks were over here. So the gear, so we could plug the gear into it, we had to put a bunch of pigtails on the power conditioners because the cables from the gear when they were over here wasn't long enough. Now that everything is sitting side by side like they are, all those 2 bins of cables got eliminated from the system, which is great. Great cleanliness, neat and organized. I got a bunch of stuff that if I ever need power stuff in the future, I got tons of extensions, all kinds of stuff, which is great. So that's the other benefit of having these 3 racks side by side. So now the next step, because I still have to wait for the HDMI cables, as I said, our next step now is starting to tackle this. All this is going to end up behind those racks, and that's when it's going to get crazy. But what I have to really get to now is hopefully get figured out what sizes go where on the console. So in other words, do I have to buy any D-sub cables to replace ones that are too short? I really hope not, but we may have to, and if we do, we do. I need to figure that out as soon as possible. So the next step is get the SSL into the patch bays, figure out what cables I have to replace, if any. Let's hope not many, let's hope not any. And then from there, the last piece of the puzzle is now hooking up all the gear with all the XLR breakout cables, you know, all the gear. All that's got to go to the patch bays. And as you saw in the first video, everything is labeled. It should just be plug and play. And then we start testing. And so yes, this is going to start to get more hairy as far as cabling goes. There's going to be a whole bunch of D-subs, a big trunk of them. It's going to come running down the wall, and it's going to come running in here along the floor. And then it's going to go up to the patch bays. Hopefully they're long enough. We have all these wire managers that we have here to help with the wire management. All that, and then also got to go to the quantums and the NG levels. So there's going to be cables coming in here. There's going to be cables coming in here. There's going to be cables coming in on that rack, coming up. So it's going to get crazy. It's never going to be as neat as this ever again, but I'm going to do the best I can. And again, I say it again, and I keep saying this, and I love this. I'm so glad I did this. The fact that we're going to be able to put D-subs on these quantums and on these NG levels here and here, and just be able to reach in and turn them and tighten them, is going to be so nice. And not have these power bricks sliding all over the place and getting in the way, and not having the D-subs bumping into the Thunderbolt cables and disconnecting things. It's going to be really nice to be able to just come in on the wire managers and just come in and just go straight in and screw these things in. Everything will be labeled. You can see everything, and it should be good. And when it's all said and done, I'm hoping, we'll see. Yes, we're going to have some cables that are going to come out a little bit. It's not going to be flush up against the racks, obviously, but we're still going to have a ton of space back here for, again, just being able to get back here and see things. And then who knows? I mean, maybe there'll be other things that we'll be able to put back there. Still got the guitars on the wall for now. Don't know what I'm going to do there. But anyway, that's our update. So, I don't know if we're about halfway done, maybe. I don't know. It feels like we're about halfway done now. So we're about halfway done with the project. Oh, I just got an email the last night that my Focal trios have been shipped. I got the FedEx tracking numbers. They will be here in 2 days. So So today's Saturday. They're thinking Monday. So Monday, Tuesday, I'm going to pick up the trios, which is great because I was wondering if I was going to have to put the twins back up on the stands while I was waiting for the trios, but I don't. And that's great because there's two things that got to happen. The trios, people think the trios are physically bigger speakers. They're really not. The cabinet sizes are almost identical to the twins. But once I place those up, not only I got to redo the trim off, right? Because I have all of our gears been moved. This room is completely changed now. So I have to redo the trim off with all the changes in the room, and then to have the new speakers at the same time, it'll be really great. So we'll be able to set up the trios as we push the console back. And I'm hoping in the next 3 days, 4 days at the very most, this will be done. The only thing that's going to hold me up is if I have to wait for D-sub cables because I have to buy some longer cables. That's the only thing that's going to hold me up. So I'm hoping like hell we don't have to do that because that could get very expensive. But I have to do what I have to do because we are committed and we are into this thing now. But I will tell you, I'm getting more excited about it. I like it. It's going to look great. It's going to feel nicer to work in here. So anyway, that's the update for now. I don't know if there'll be another section after this video or if I start a brand new video, depending on how long this video is at this point. But anyway, again, thanks for joining me, guys. I hope you find this stuff interesting. If you have any questions, comment below, and I will see you in the next video or the next section. See ya.